The Supreme Court of Justice of Venezuela kicked off a new year of judicial activities with the presentation of its annual report at an event attended by President Nicolás Maduro. In Palestine, the genocidal Israeli operation against Gaza entered its 117th days. Health authorities registered more than 27,000 deaths to date. And in France, protesting farmers blocked highways to Paris again on Wednesday, despite the government's promise to help. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Supreme Court of Justice of Venezuela on Wednesday started the cycle of judicial activities corresponding to 2024 with the presentation of its annual report in an event attended by President Nicolás Maduro. In this context, the president of the highest Venezuelan court, Cariclia Rodriguez, opened the judicial period with a summary of the job functions and competences carried out in 2023. In the meantime, the representative of the first court expressed that the decisions taken by the court corresponding to the legitimacy of its constitutional functions, and also reaffirmed, together with the rest of the magistrates, the commitment to enforce social justice, the responsibility for equal human rights, and the peace of the country.
From this Supreme Court, we will continue to take the necessary measures to address them in a proactive and constructive way. We consider ourselves on the right side of history because we support the most sublime cause that can exist. Love for humanity, love that is materialized in the strong defense of equal rights, social justice, respect for human rights, peace and harmony of our people, strongly opposing all kinds of discrimination, oppression, injustice, and any form of violence or destabilization that threatens national sovereignty.
The President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, on occasion of the opening of the cycle of judicial activities, congratulated the armed forces and called on them to be alert in defense of the homeland and the Constitution.
Honor y gloria a esta Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana.
Honor and glory to this Bolivarian armed force. Today, generals and admirals, armed force, military power of the nation, military power alert and ready for whatever comes out, when it comes out, and wherever it comes out, to defend the homeland, the Constitution, and the people. When it comes out, wherever it comes out, and whatever it comes out. Understood?
Entendido.
The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, in his speech at the solemn session, highlighted the work of the Supreme Court of Justice and its magistrates in the fulfillment of their duties and the Constitution.
Truly, never before has Venezuela had such a high court of justice, with such moral people, so prepared, so professional, with the best of Venezuelan intellectuals as Professor Luis Damiani,
De justicia, garantía de transparencia, moralidad y honestidad.
Who is a guarantee of justice, a guarantee of transparency, morality, and honesty. We have 5 powers.
Y cada poder debe autoexigirse.
And each power must demand of itself to take the principles of the Constitution to the maximum. Each power must assume the great task.
On Wednesday in Argentina, Milei's administration faces a key challenge as the lower house of Congress begins to debate its mega decree. The project, one of the legal pillars of Milei's political and economic plan, is also known as the Omnibus Bill in reference to the amount of articles it entails, as it aims to reform key aspects of political life, economic regulations and social rights. The ruling party has already reduced the bill from 664 articles to 386. Still, the debate is expected to last 35 hours with the possible intermissions. Analysts predict a tough session because even though the ruling party might achieve a general approval with the support of sectors of the opposition, lawmakers will then have to vote on every article in particular, and many points are still resisted even within the friendliest position. Among the most controversial points objected even by lawmakers who are willing to vote the bill as a whole are several articles, including, on the one hand, the authorization to privatize 37 public enterprises, which the opposition argues are of strategic value and should be evaluated separately. Also, the delegation of extraordinary faculties to the president, which would give Milei extra powers over tariff and energy sectors, among other areas. Another highly questioned aspect is the easing of debt policy, which would allow the government to take on foreign debt without the approval of Congress. And finally, changes regarding environmental legislation sought to protect forests, glaciers, and prevent indiscriminate fires are also expected to be highly disputed. Last Friday, the Minister of the Economy, Luis Caputo, announced the withdrawal of the tax chapter of the bill to heavy opposition. This Wednesday is the last day of the electoral campaign in El Salvador. Political parties and candidates for the presidency and the Legislative Assembly will enter the electoral silence stage as of February 1st. The measure is applied 3 days before elections and the same day of the elections to be held on February 4th. This same measure will be activated again on February 29th, March 1st, 2nd and 3rd for the elections of 4 mayors and other municipal officials. The legal terms of the electoral campaign are 4 months for the presidential and 3 months for the legislative. Article 284 of the Electoral Code prohibits in the electoral silence the sale, distribution and consumption of alcohol in public places and establishes sanctions of one minimum salary for each infraction, that is $365 according to Article 253 of the regulation. On Tuesday in the United States, the Washington Office of Latin America Affairs, known as HOLA, accused the administration of Nayib Bukele of not complying with the electoral political rights. In this sense, the U.S. non-governmental organization accused Bukele of not complying with the minimum standards for the exercise of political rights in the face of the presidential elections on Sunday. In this regard, WOLA pointed out that Bukele's policies led to the deterioration of the rule of law and democratic values in his nation. On the other hand, WOLA also highlighted as Bukele's mistakes the militarization of the Legislative Assembly on February 9, 2020, the dismissal of the magistrate of the Supreme Court of Justice and the Attorney General of the Republic by the deputies of the Legislative Assembly, along with the fact that presidential re-election is prohibited in their constitution. As Haiti's insecurity crisis deepens at the hand of violent paramilitary groups and government inaction, thousands have been forced from their homes. Let's listen to the testimony of one of many internal refugees in the Caribbean nation.
I am Sylvain Pierre René from Kafouki. We are among the victims of the paramilitaries. The days go by and we continue to struggle. We were forced to leave behind everything, our home, cars, and belongings. We live in the streets. We fight to remain alive. No one is reporting on what we are going through. We were not ready to lose everything. With the Haitian government that we have, we do not see much hope. Our paramilitaries have destroyed our communities. We do not know where all of this is headed. We hope for a national mobilization that can challenge the powers that be. Otherwise, we will keep falling deeper into this abyss.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, the genocidal operation carried out by Israel against the population in Gaza reached 117 days. In this regard, health authorities confirmed that the total death toll exceeded 27,000, with more than 70% of them women and children. In the meantime, local authorities reported that the Israeli occupation army in the last hours bombarded the cities of Khan Yunis, Al-Darash and Havalia. In this way, the Ministry of Health assures that drones continue to target family residents full of civilians and refugee camps full of wounded and survivors. It should be noted that the official death toll does not include the bodies that remain under the rubble. Israel confirmed on Wednesday that it has begun the flood tunnels in Gaza, despite confirming that it is certain that the Israeli hostages captured on October 7th are in these subway constructions. Months ago, the possibility was tough to be noting that nothing that a rumor. Later, the Army Chief of Staff Hezri Halevi described the possibility as a good idea. This Wednesday, the Army itself confirmed that they have been carrying out the project for weeks with machines and tools developed by them with the support of the Defense Ministry. The families of the 136 hostages have raised the alarm, as the Army itself has confirmed to them that the Hamas is keeping them hidden in the tunnels. Palestinian environmental authorities denounced the destruction of biodiversity in the Gaza Strip due to persistent Israeli bombings. In a statement, the environmental authorities denounced the destruction and death of wildlife habitats, as well as the burning of all forms of plant life, including trees, shrubs, and grasses. The statement specified that this damage to the ecosystem caused the pollution of water, air, and soil, while creating mountains of millions of tons of waste from the destruction of buildings. The Environmental Quality Authority warned that this situation is also influencing the worsening of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In Romania, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan on Wednesday called for a ceasefire in Gaza and said the international community should act strongly to end the humanitarian disaster. In a news conference in the Romanian capital Bucharest, the minister stated that blocking of humanitarian aid and medical supplies to Gaza by Israel should never be accepted by the international community. Speaking alongside the Romania's Foreign Minister Lumita Obedescu, he also added that they cannot and must not remain silent while 2 million people are openly left to die of starvation and epidemic diseases under bombardment, and that world public opinion must once again be strong to prevent this massacre. Minister Fidan also called on Israel to implement last week's interim decision by the Internal Court of Justice to protect civilians and declare an immediate ceasefire.
I call on Israel to implement the interim injunction of the International Court of Justice and declare a full ceasefire immediately. Israel continues to target Gaza, which has been under blockade for weeks. Those who survive bombardment suffer from hunger and disease. Israel's blocking of humanitarian aid and medical supplies from entering Gaza should never be accepted by the international community. We cannot and must not remain silent as 2 million people are openly left to die of hunger and epidemic diseases under bombardment. I call on the world community to act strongly once again to prevent this massacre.
The United States Department of Defense updated the number of people injured in the attack on its military base in Jordan to more than 40. The drone attack on the Tower 22 base on the border between Jordan and Syria occurred early Sunday morning. Approximately 350 United States Army and Air Force personnel are deployed there. In the attack claimed by the Iraqi resistance, 3 soldiers were killed. 8 of the already 40 wounded had to be evacuated, one of them in serious condition.
He's met twice with his national security team yesterday and today. He's weighing the options before him. As he said yesterday, we will respond. We'll do that on our schedule, in our time, and we'll do it in the manner of the President's choosing as Commander-in-Chief. We'll also do it fully cognizant of the fact that these groups, backed by Tehran, have just taken the lives of American troops.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In France, protesting farmers blocked highways to Paris again on Wednesday despite the government's promise to help. Farmers disrupted traffic on a highway to the capital city close to the international Orly airport with their tractors. They demand better pay, fewer constraints, and lower costs. The government on Tuesday promised measures including emergency cash aid and controls on imported food. After several days of escalating protest, French farmers spent the night at barricades on Monday to Tuesday to press their case, and growing and referring food has become too difficult. Farmers have threatened to move in on the capital, host of the Summer Olympics in 6 months, if their demands are not met. Farmers blocked more traffic arteries across Belgium as they sought to disrupt trade at major ports and other economic lifelines. They also moved closer to Brussels on the eve of a major European Union summit. These protests are the continuous demand for concessions to receive better prices for their products and less bureaucracy, which, according to them, hinders their work. In the country's northwest, farmers using their tractors blocked access to the port of Zeebrugge on Wednesday. The rallies are part of farming protests across the 27 countries of the European Union. Hundreds of thousands of Belgians have been facing disruptions and struggling to get to work or saw their doctor's appointments cancelled because of the protest. The European Union's Executive Committee on Wednesday announced plans to protect farmers from cheap exports from Ukraine and allow them to use some land they had been forced to abandon for environmental reasons. Amid protests from farmers in France, Belgium and other countries, the European Union unveiled its plans and admitted that it must be approved by the Member States and the European Parliament, an element that farmers' unions see as a sudden and symbolic concession. In this regard, Maros Sefcovic, Vice President of the European Commission, said that they are doing their best to address farmers' concerns. It is worth noting that a mobilization of farmers is planned on Thursday in front of the European Union headquarters during a summit of government leaders. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife were sentenced on Wednesday to 14 years in prison for corruption. The sentence comes a day after another special court convicted Khan of leaking state secrets and gave him a 10-year prison sentence. The latest conviction and sentencing were Khan's third since 2022, when he was ousted from power and came ahead of Pakistan's February 8th parliamentary elections. The court also disqualified Khan for 10 years from holding any public office. Pakistan has a history of arresting former prime ministers or sidling them ahead of elections if they are deemed to pose a challenge to the security establishment. The government of Ethiopia reported that at least 400 people died in starvation in the Tigray and Amhara regions in the last 6 months. The Ombudsman's office sent a group of experts to assess these drought-stricken regions, which are recovering from a civil war that ended 14 months ago. The study found that only a small fraction of the people in need of humanitarian aid in those regions received food from humanitarian agencies in January. Government authorities called on international organizations present in Ethiopia to intensify their efforts to address hunger in the country. According to official figures, some 20 million people in that African country are in need of food as a result of the economic crisis and the drought being faced by the country. In Sudan, between 10,000 and 15,000 people have died as a result of the conflict between the army and the rapid deployment of forces. The Security Council of the United Nations organizations expressed in a report its concern about the armed conflict that persists in the Darfur region, west of Sudan. The document, which is based on the accounts of witnesses and victims of violence, highlights that most of the crimes perpetrated by the armed groups are ethnic and even religious. According to the United Nations data, in West Darfur, at least 10,000 to 15,000 people were killed, and 500,000 people had to leave Sudan and enter eastern Chad to flee the armed violence. And we go to the world of sports because on February 1st will be the opening day of the Caribbean Series, an annual club tournament contested by professional baseball teams in Latin America. The 2024 edition will be played in the U.S. state of Florida until February 9th and will be the first time since 1991 series to be held outside Latin America, as well as the first Caribbean series to be held at a Major League Baseball ballpark. In this sense, in the neighborhood known as Little Havana, where the Miami Marlins team play, fans from all Latin America will gather in support of their nations. It is worth noting that the Venezuelan League champion team is managed by former MLB player Ozzie Guillen, who reached the Winter League trophy with Tiburones de la Guaira, snapping a 37-year winless drought. In 2005, Guillen became the first Latino manager in MLB to win a World Series when he led Chicago White Sox to their first championship in 88 years. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.